welcome to Albuquerque, New Mexico. The date is June 4th, 1994, and our speaker is Mr. Guido Moosebrugger. Guido is a close friend of Edward Albert Meier, better known as the Swiss contactee Billy Meier. Guido's interpreter will be Dr. Hans Wagner from UCLA. Guido has had the opportunity to photograph several day and nighttime flight demonstrations of Pleiadian spacecraft. In addition, he is the author of a comprehensive book entitled And Yet They Fly. Since the summer of 1976, Guido has been an active member of FIGU, a German acronym which stands for Free Community of Interests for the Fringe and Spiritual Sciences and Ufological Studies. The information on this audio tape is from Guido's workshop at a conference in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Guido's workshop opens with a slide presentation. Although the slide presentation cannot be seen on audio tape, we have included it for informational purposes. Here is our presentation.
Gut, dann bitte das nächste.
Please, the next picture.
Ich zeige Ihnen jetzt noch ein paar Besonderheiten. Und zwar sehen wir hier ein gelandetes Schiff, das aus sehr großer Nähe, wenn ich mal sagen darf, aufgenommen wurde.
I'd like to show you another few more particular things. We're seeing here a ship that has landed and which was taken from very close by.
Und hier sieht man diese orangefarbenen Fenster, Bordfenster, die eigentlich gar keine Fenster sind im üblichen Sinne.
You see here also these orange colors windows, these board windows, which in the real sense of the word are not real windows.
Man kann zwar hinausschauen, aber für diesen Zweck sind nämlich in der Pilotenkanzel oben eigene Kontrollsichtschirme vorhanden, die man etwa mit unseren Fernsehgeräten vergleichen könnte.
You can look out from these windows from the inside, but for this purpose, in the where the pilot is, there are specific control viewing monitors, which you might compare to our TV sets.
Und eine gerade überflogene Landschaft sowie Personen, Tiere und Gegenstände, die werden dann mit Hilfe dieser Kontrollsichtschirme völlig wirklichkeitsgetreu in diesem Schirm abgebildet.
And the landscape of which you're flying, as well as persons, animals, or other objects, will then be rendered absolutely, precisely close to the reality of the truth on these control viewing monitors.
Und wenn man etwas Besonderes sucht, so wird das einfach vorher programmiert und erscheint dann ganz automatisch auf einem zweiten Schirm in Vergrößerung.
When you're looking for some particular detail, then this is going to be pre-programmed, and it will appear automatically on a window within the monitor.
Also es erübrigt sich vollkommen, da einen einzigen Blick aus dem Wandfenster zu werfen, sei es um die Landschaft zu betrachten oder um irgendwelche Beobachtungen aus der Vogelperspektive vorzunehmen.
So it's entirely unnecessary to cast a glance out of one of the windows in order to look at the landscape or to make any kind of observation from the bird's view.
Diese Bordfenster erfüllen nämlich eine ganz andere Aufgabe, nämlich die genaue Analyse der Atmosphärenzusammensetzung außerhalb des Schiffes.
These board windows actually fulfill a totally different task, namely the exact analysis of the exact composition of the atmosphere outside of the spacecraft.
Für die Pleiadier vom Planeten Era ist allerdings die Atmosphäre der Erde gut geeignet, sodass sie ohne Schutzmaßnahmen aussteigen können, also ohne Raumanzug.
For the Pleiadians from the planet Era, however, the atmosphere of the planet Earth is very suitable, so that without taking any additional protective measures, they are able to leave their spacecraft and stay here on the outside.
Ja, und in diesem Falle färben sich dann eben diese Fenster in dieser Orangefarbe. Und im Innern erscheint dann durch eine indirekte Beleuchtung ein gelblich-grünes Licht.
In this case, the board windows take on this orange color on the outside, and inside of the spacecraft will then appear the indirect lighting in a yellowish-green light.
Ja, und diese Farbe sehen Sie hier, das ist nämlich eine Aufnahme, die von innen aus der Pilotenkanzel aufgenommen wurde. Wobei wir dann außen links unten ein gelandetes Schiff sehen und oben in der Mitte ein schwebendes Schiff.
You see this particular color I was referring to here because this photo was taken from inside a spacecraft, from the pilot's seat, in which case you see on the lower left a spacecraft that has landed and another one which is still airborne.
Wie gesagt, aufgrund dieser gelblich-grünen Färbung können die Insassen sofort feststellen, jawohl, die außerhalb des Schiffes sind die Bedingungen in Bezug auf Gravitation, Druck und Temperatur und so weiter so beschaffen, dass sie gefahrlos aussteigen können.
Because of this yellowish-green color, the people in the spacecraft can recognize immediately that the atmospheric conditions outside the spacecraft with regard to pressure, gravitation and so on are such that they can disembark without danger.
Und erst im luftleeren Raum, wo dann gar keine Atmosphäre mehr vorhanden ist, da entwickeln sich diese Bordfenster dann zu den eigentlichen farblosen, durchsichtigen Fenstern, so wie wir es gewohnt sind.
And only when you are in space, when you do not have air anymore, then actually the board windows will develop a natural see-through color so that you can look through without any trouble the way you saw
Hier
it.
sehen Sie wiederum ein gelandetes Schiff. Oben auf der Kopfplatte ist ganz deutlich eine Stabantenne mit einer kleinen Halbkugel an der Spitze zu erkennen.
Here you see another spaceship that landed. On top you see this staff antenna with a semi-spheric tip on top.
Damit sind zwei Funktionen verbunden. Und zwar A, dieses antennenförmige Gerät dient einmal als Energiesammelgerät. Das heißt, mit ihm wird aus der Umgebung ständig Energie aus dem Weltraum angesaugt.
Two functions are connected with this specific antenna. It serves to collect energy. With its help, it is able to suck in energy from the environment of the flying spacecraft. It constantly sucks in this energy.
Diese Art der Energiegewinnung ist natürlich sehr praktisch und vor allem billig, weil sie nichts kostet.
This kind of producing energy is very practical, of course, and above all, it's very cheap. It doesn't cost anything.
Und gleichzeitig dient nun dieser Stab auch als Antenne für das sogenannte Videophon, also für den Empfang und die Sendung einer Sprechfunkanlage mit Fernsehschirm.
At the same time, this staff of the antenna serves for the so-called videophone, that is for the reception and the transmission of the intercom system with the TV monitor.
Sie sind allerdings nur planetarisch einsetzbar und anders geht es dann leider nicht. Wenn man also weiter funken will, dann braucht man eine eigene Vorrichtung und das ist dann der sogenannte Hyperfunk.
They can be used, however, only within the planetary system. If you want to use the radio for go further out, then you have the so-called hyper radio.
Und der Hyperfunk, der wird dann nicht über den Normalraum geleitet, sondern über einen sogenannten Hyperraum.
This special hyper radio is not going over normal frequencies, but in a different medium.
Diese pleiadischen Schiffe, wie auch viele andere, haben die Fähigkeit, sich abzuschirmen, und zwar gegen optische, gegen akustische Ortung, ja sogar auch gegen Radarerfassung. Und hier sehen wir eine Nachtaufnahme eines pleiadischen Schiffes, das nicht abgeschirmt wurde. Beim nächsten Bild, da sehen wir dann ein abgeschirmtes Schiff.
Of course, the Pleiadian ships are able to shield themselves against optical and acoustical localizing attempts, also against radar, so that you can neither see nor hear. Now here we have the night photo of a ship which has not been shielded.
Das ist es noch nicht, das ist das nächste, das ich sagen wollte. Dieses Schiff ist abgeschirmt und das kann man erkennen an diesen blauen Flecken.
The fact that this ship is shielded, you can see on this blue color
Also
here.
es schwebte ungefähr 200 Meter über dem Erdboden.
It is hovering about 200 yards above the ground.
Nun, in der Schweiz, wo die Landschaft ja nicht so weiträumig ist wie hier in den USA, wo die einzelnen Bauernhöfe sehr eng beieinander stehen, da war es für Willy Meier oft sehr schwierig, am helllichten Tage solche Aufnahmen zu machen. Man hätte eben die ganze Umgebung absperren müssen, aber dazu hatte man keine Gelegenheit. Und die Theater haben das eben nicht so gerne, wenn da Leute, fremde Leute zusehen, denn das hätte dann sehr schnell einen Volksauflauf gegeben.
In Switzerland, where the landscape where this doesn't have so much open spaces in the United States, and where the individual farms often are very close together, it was for Billy very difficult to allow to photograph these spacecraft in bright daylight in the immediate vicinity of other places, and the Pleiadians wouldn't like it if people would see him and suddenly they would come together out of the houses.
Deshalb brachten die Pleiadier die sogenannte Sektorenabschirmung zur Anwendung. Dabei wird ein solches Raumschiff ringsum abgeschirmt, und zwar so, dass nur noch ein ganz schmaler Sektor vom Schiff bis zum Fotografen frei bleibt.
For this reason, the Pleiadians made use of the so-called sectional shielding. That means that the entire spacecraft is all the way around is shielded, so only a small angle, a small section from the spaceship to the photographer remains visible.
Also wenn jemand jetzt direkt daneben stehen würde, neben dem Fotografen, dann könnte er das Schiff sehen, aber 10, 20 Meter weiter rechts oder links ist es schon unsichtbar.
In other words, if someone would stand right next to the photographer, he would be able to see the ship. But if he would stand 10 or 20 yards next to him, away from him, he would not be able to see it anymore.
Und ein paar Bekannte von Billy, die wollten das partout nicht glauben, und deshalb hatte Billy diese Leute zu einer Demonstration eingeladen.
And some acquaintances of Billy's just didn't want to believe this, and this is why Billy had invited these people for a demonstration.
Und ein Herr von diesen Leuten, die da eingeladen wurde, der hatte dann einen Diafilm besorgt, den er in Billys Kamera einrollte, und die Leute konnten also sehen, wie Billy fotografiert, aber vom Schiff hatten sie keine Ahnung, das war unsichtbar für sie.
A gentleman from these people who had obtained a film, a slide film, which he himself put into Billy's camera, and the people around him could see how Billy then was photographing the ship, but they were unable to see it.
Und nach dieser Demonstration nahm dieser Herr, der den Film besorgt hatte, wieder raus aus der Kamera und ließ dann den Film entwickeln, und nach der Entwicklung zeigte sich dann, dass eben hier das Schiff zu sehen war.
After the demonstration, the gentleman I mentioned took the roll of film out of Billy's camera in order to have it developed, and on the photos afterwards, the doubting people were able to see the spaceship which Billy had photographed.
Hier sehen Sie ein Pleiadenschiff, und links daneben, das ist allerdings eine Vergrößerung von einem Mirage-Düsenjäger der Schweizer Luftwaffe.
This picture is an enlargement. It shows a Pleiadic spaceship together with a Mirage fighter jet of the Swiss Air Force.
Und diese Pilotin dieses Schiffes namens Semjase hat hier einen Test veranstaltet und hat sich absichtlich am helllichten Tag nicht abgeschirmt, um zu sehen, was jetzt passieren wird.
the female pilot of this spaceship by the name of Semyase. She has an exception. He intentionally did not shield her ship during the broad daylight, just in order to test what would happen.
Und es dauerte nicht lange, dann kam dieser Düsenjäger angebraust und versuchte 22 Mal in die Nähe des Schiffes heranzufliegen.
And it didn't take very long until this fighter jet came, and he tried 22 times to get close to the spaceship.
Und die Pilotin, die musste jedes Mal ausweichen, nach oben oder nach unten. Und als Antwort für diese Belästigung blockierte sie die Fotokamera des Piloten, sodass dieser keine einzige Aufnahme davon knipsen konnte.
The pilot had to evade this attack by going either up or down, and as an answer to this what was bothering her here, she blocked the camera of the pilot so that the pilot was unable to take any pictures.
Der ganze Vorfall wurde natürlich wie so üblich in die Geheimstufe 1 eingestuft. Das heißt, sämtliche Piloten dieser Staffel bekamen absolutes Schweigeverbot.
The entire incident was, of course, as is usually the case in such incidents, was got the stamp top secret. That means that the pilots in this whole fighter group were sworn to secrecy.
Trotzdem muss diese Story irgendwie durchgesickert sein, denn eines Tages kam ein Herr zu uns ins Zentrum von Billy Meier und erkundigte sich, ob denn diese Geschichte tatsächlich stattgefunden hätte.
In spite of that, somehow the story must have leaked out, because someday a gentleman came to us, to Billy Meier's center, and asked whether this incident had actually occurred.
Nun kommen wir zu den Landespuren. Es ist ja in ufologischen Kreisen allgemein bekannt, kein Geheimnis, dass wenn außerirdische Schiffe gelandet sind auf der Erde, dass sie dann irgendwelche Spuren hinterlassen, zum Beispiel Fußabdrücke, Landespuren, Brandspuren und Ähnliches.
Now, I'd like to show you some landing tracks. It is a well-known fact among ufologists, and has been known for a long time, that extraterrestrial spaceships land once in a while on Earth, and then in doing so, they leave tracks like footprints, landing tracks, burn tracks, and so on.
Hauptsächlich in den Jahren 1976, 77, da konnte man an verschiedenen Plätzen in der Schweiz solche außerirdische Landespuren besichtigen.
Particularly during the years 1976-77, you were able to observe such, at various places in Switzerland, such tracks of spaceships.
Sie sind aber nicht aus irgendwelcher Unachtsamkeit entstanden, sondern auf eigenen Wunsch des Kontaktmannes, der eben darum gebeten hat, man möchte sowas zur Demonstration zeigen. Nicht?
But they did not originate out of an inattentiveness, but they were made, they were brought about at the express wishes of the Swiss contact man Billy Meier, just in order to be able to demonstrate that these aliens had been there.
Ja, übrigens bei diesen Bildern sind auch meine eigenen dabei. Ich habe auch etliche.
Some of these pictures, by the way, are my own, the following pictures.
Nun, zunächst einmal wiederum ein solches gelandetes Plejadenschiff mit 7 Meter Durchmesser für 3 Mann Besatzung, das natürlich normalerweise überhaupt keine Landespuren hinterlässt, weil es sonst normalerweise über dem Boden schwebt.
First again, a Pleiadian spaceship with 70 meters or 70 yards diameter for a crew of 3, which normally, of course, does not leave any landing tracks, because in case of a landing, it does not get into direct contact with the ground, but it always remains hovering above the ground.
Aber dieses Bild hat nun eine ganz besondere Bedeutung, und erstens wegen dieser wellenförmigen Kontur, die darauf schließen lässt, dass dieses Bild aus zu großer Nähe fotografiert wurde, und dann entstehen solche Effekte.
This picture has a special importance in 2 respects. Firstly, it shows these wave-shaped contours, which come about very often when the photos are taken from very close up.
Es ist sogar einmal passiert, dass Billy Meier zu nahe dran war und die Kamera explodierte.
It happened once even that Billy Meier was too close, and so that his camera exploded.
Und zu diesem Bild ist noch zu sagen, dass bei der Originalaufnahme, da hätte man 3 Beine sehen müssen. Und diese 3 Füße oder Beine, wie ich sie nennen will, die sind mit voller Absicht einfach abgeschnitten worden.
And I have to add, in the case of this photo, you would actually have had to see 3 legs of a kind of landing gear, which have been purposely removed.
Dieses Gemälde dürfte Ihnen hier in Amerika bekannt sein. Es stammt nämlich von einem amerikanischen Maler namens James Nichol aus Tucson, Arizona.
You should probably know this painting here in America, because it was done by an American painter by the name of James Nichol from Tucson, Arizona.
Er hat eben diese 3 Beine hier unten dran gezeichnet. Ja,
He added these 3 legs here at the bottom.
Nun, wenn so ein Triadenschiff landet, ein 7-Meter-Schiff, dann hinterlässt es auf einer Wiese mit sehr hohem Gras 3 kreisförmige Landeflächen von je 2 Meter Durchmesser. Und die sind dreieckförmig angeordnet. Die sehen aus wie gigantische Fußabdrücke.
When one of these 7-yard ship of the Pleiadians lands on a meadow, for example, it leaves 3 circular-shaped landing areas of each a diameter of each 2 meters, which are somehow arranged in a triangle, which look like gigantic footprints.
Das ist zufällig auch eine Aufnahme von mir. Man sieht hier eine Brandstelle und die ist darauf zurückzuführen, weil in der Nähe eine Hochspannungsleitung vorbeiführte. Da wurde offenbar Energie angezogen.
This is a photo from me again. You see here some burnt area, and this goes back to the fact that there is a high power transmission line close by, and the energy was attracted.
Sehen Sie hier die Leitung da rechts oben.
You see the power line on the upper right here.
Wie man sieht, sind also diese Grashalme spiralförmig von innen nach außen im Gegenuhrzeigersinn platt gedrückt, und die bleiben platt am Boden liegen und stehen nicht mehr auf. Sie wachsen zwar in horizontaler Richtung weiter, aber sie stehen nicht auf.
As you see here, these spears of grass have been pressed flatly to the ground in a spiral shape, counterclockwise, and they keep flat on the ground, and they keep growing in horizontal position as if nothing had happened.
Und an solchen Landeplätzen ist das Gras jahrelang nicht mehr so hoch und so dicht gewachsen wie vorher.
And at such landing pads, the grass doesn't grow anymore for years as high and as dense as in the immediate environment.
Hier sind gleich 2 Schiffe nebeneinander gelandet, und zwar das eine von Semjase und das andere von Quetzal. Quetzal war Stationskommandant viele Jahre hier im Solsystem, und es war auch Semjases Schwester namens Playa, die war auch dabei, und die wollte unbedingt mit Billys Moped fahren.
Here in this clearing, you can see that 2 Pleiadian ships have landed next to each other. In one of the ships, there was a gentleman by the name of Semjase from the planet of Era. In the other one, there was Quetzal, who for years, many years, had been a station commander in the Sol system. And his sister, Semjase's sister Playa, by the way, was with him too. She definitely wanted to ride on Billy's moped.
Also es war damals üblich, dass Billy sehr oft mit seinem Moped zu diesen Kontaktorten gefahren ist.
It was customary at the time that Billy used this moped, this motor-driven bicycle, to go to his contact places.
Dem Jase stülpte dann eine sogenannte Energieglocke über das Schiff, sodass der Regen ihr überhaupt nichts mehr anhaben konnte. Nicht? Das ist dann abgeprallt wie an einem Regenschirm.
At that point, Samyasa, she kind of put a bell-shaped cover of energy, an energy shield over the spacecraft, keeping away the rain, so the rain was just running off, just like from an umbrella.
Und anschließend wurde dann der nasse Boden getrocknet und das ging innerhalb von wenigen Minuten, als ob da 3 Stunden lang die Sonne hingeschienen hätte.
Afterwards, the ground was dried. This happened very quickly within 3 minutes, as if the sun had been shining for several hours.
Und anschließend wurden dann die Landebeine ausgestreckt und auf den Boden gesetzt und dabei entstanden diese komischen Landespuren.
And afterwards, the legs of this landing gear were extended and put on the ground, and that's when you got these strange-looking tracks here.
Das ist ein japanischer Besucher und daneben eben dieser Münchner Gesprächspartner, von dem ich vorhin gesprochen habe.
Yeah, this here is a Japanese visitor, and next to him this visitor from Munich who was just talking about.
Ja, dann möchte ich noch erwähnen, dass hier eine Messung an verschiedenen solchen Landespuren wurden Messungen vorgenommen, und zwar mit Hilfe eines Strahlungsdetektors.
I would like to mention in this context that at the various landing tracks, measurements were taken by means of a ray detector.
Dieser Strahlendetektor wurde eigens von einer Schweizer Firma ausgeliehen.
This ray detector had been borrowed specifically for this purpose from a Swiss firm.
Und die Strahlungsmessung, die ergab, das ist übrigens der Kontaktmann hier bei dieser Landestelle, und dieses Untersuchungsgerät hat also festgestellt, dass der Strahlungspegel innerhalb von 7 Metern bis zu 400% höher lag als in der Umgebung.
This measurement of the rays turned out that the level of radiation within this landing area was up to 400% higher than in its environment.
Ich möchte aber ausdrücklich betonen, sie waren nicht radioaktiv.
I would like to stress, however, that these radiation was not radioactive.
Und auch ein metallener Anhänger des Kontaktmannes zeigte ebenfalls überhöhte Strahlenwerte.
And a metal pendant of the contact person also showed an increased level of radiation.
Ja, zum Abschluss wäre vielleicht noch zu sagen, dass Billy nach diesem Kontakt dann direkt aus dem Schiff wieder in das Wohngebäude zurückgebeamt wurde.
Finally, I'd like to state that after this having beamed up, Billy was beamed down again directly into his house.
Und er hatte natürlich genau dieselbe Kleidung wie vorher, in Sommerkleidung. Er war vollkommen trocken. Ist ganz klar, denn bekanntlich gibt es ja innerhalb des Raumschiffes keinen Regen.
He was wearing the same summer clothing. He was totally dry because, as we all know, there's no rain inside a spaceship.
So, jetzt darf ich Sie bitten, dann mit dem Vortrag zu beginnen.
Mr. Moosebrugger has asked me to...
Damit wir schneller vorankommen, habe ich ihn gebeten, er möchte meinen Vortrag vorlesen. Dann haben wir mehr Zeit für die Diskussion.
Mr. Moosebrugger has asked me in order to save time, so we have more time for the discussion afterwards, that I translate to you directly from his German script his presentation.
Wenn Sie einverstanden sind, ja.
You know, cuts it down a little bit. We're talking first then about what is called here the Billy Meier case. The Swiss citizen Billy Meier, or Billy Eduard Albert Meier, residing in the Thurs Valley, close to Zurich in Switzerland, has maintained contacts with extraterrestrial intelligences from early childhood on. in telepathic as well as form, as well as personally from face to face. Strangely enough, these encounters always occurred in 11-year intervals. During the first two periods, from 1942 to 1953, and 1953 to 1964, only two extraterrestrial contact persons appeared, and these were a dignified, wise Pleiadian by the name of Sfat, that was the grandfather of the already mentioned Semjase, and after that, the young lady by the name of Asket, from the neighboring Dal universe. Our universe, by the way, is named Dern, D-E-R-N. After a break of 11 years, on January 28, 1975, an entirely new phase began. That is, the contacts were for the first time made public with contact reports on a worldwide basis. Among Billy's conversation partners, there were specifically, or mainly, a Pleiadian from the planet Era, E-R-R-A, as well as their allies from the Lyra-Vega system. The names are Semjase, Quetzal, Ptah, Pleia, Manara, Rala, Eleda, Talida, Electra, Hilara, Isodos, and Sola. On January 28, 1986, this third period was concluded as planned. Actually, it was supposed to be continued from now on only in telepathic form, and to be sure by Asket and her helpers. But this intention could not be realized because Billy's health was not very good. He had, in November 1982, he suffered a serious nervous breakdown with a brain injury because of total overexertion. And from October 1984 on, he was unable to produce contact reports. Instead, the contacts with the Pleiadians took place to the very limited extent, and only on a purely private basis, without contact reports and no answering your questions anymore. But after Billy's state of health had improved very much, contrary to expectations, the contacts were taken up again on November 17, 1989, in the official form, and again according to the way the Pleiadians wanted it to be conducted. Since that time, Billy's contact occur predominantly in the form of personal encounters, but not as frequently anymore as during the 11-year period. About the contact talks of the extraterrestrials with Billy Meier, here again contact reports were produced, which anyone can buy today. In the year 1993, Billy had 4 physical contacts with the so-called Ishvish Ptah directly in his office, namely in February, April, June, and July. The last contact took place on February the 3rd, 1994. Contacts with Billy, by the way, are planned to take place until the end of his life. Now, a few words about these contacts with the Pleiadians. The Swiss contact person, Billy Meier, is serving as the mouthpiece and the mediator to the Pleiadians and their allies, as I mentioned already. Billy Meier communicates to us, on the one hand, important messages, teachings, and warnings of the extraterrestrials, and on the other hand, he also has written his own publications, and he will do this, continue doing this also in the future. In order to add some credibility to Billy's contacts, he received permission from the Pleiadians to produce altogether 8 short films and more than 1,000 colored slides of the Pleiadian spacecrafts and their landing tracks, of fantastic flight maneuvers, as well as of diverse night and day demonstrations. Without exaggerating, this picture material is the best and most comprehensive of its kind on the entire Earth, which has ever been produced by a single person. in order to further support the credibility, very thorough investigations concerning the so-called Billy Meier case have been undertaken. American UFO researchers, under the direction of the world-famous expert Wendell Stevens, a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, together with Britt and Lee Elders and Tom Welch, and a Japanese group headed by a famous UFO researcher by the name of Junichi Yaoi. They were staying for weeks in a close proximity of Billy's house, and they were conducted a close surveillance of his activities through the day and through the night in order to uncover possible questionable behavior in his part. The researchers made themselves available for interviews, and their statements, which were made completely independent from each other, were identical, gave identical results rendered identical results in every respect. But in order to make absolutely sure, a number of well-known experts in the US, and some of them people working for NASA, have placed themselves at our disposal in order to examine Billy's proofs very precisely with all means available, also with the use of modern computer technology. A scientific analysis was conducted of, number one, a few colored slides and excerpts from films. Number two, 4 small metal samples of material from a Pleiadian ship, which the contact person had received for this purpose. And number 3, these high-pitched noises of a Pleiadian spaceship which had not been shielded. We are very thankful to the American scientists, to institutes and researchers, as well as to the Japanese research group, because they have rendered us a great service for the credibility of the entire events. On the basis of the scientific analysis, at least, no indications could be uncovered that we are dealing with any forgery. Rather, they revealed all ever new proofs for the fact that Billy Meier's contacts are authentic. Let me first refer to the photo and film analysis. Mr. Baer, the owner of a photo store in Wetzikon, Switzerland, who himself had developed Meier's black and white photo material, declared, I quote, "I don't know anything about UFOs, but the pictures are genuine. You can drag me to court if you want to, and there I would make the same statement." An expert for filmic special effects, Mr. Wally Gentleman, stated, I quote, "In order to produce these films, Meier would have had available a whole staff of capable assistants, at least 15 persons. If someone would have wanted to forge only one of the 8 films, probably he would have needed about $60,000. And only in a studio where the entire equipment is available. The required equipment would have cost another $300,000. An expert for the evaluation of photographic products, Mr. Eric Eliazo, expressed the following opinion. I quote, "I cannot imagine that someone would be able to forge these photos. If anything that was artificially added at a later point in time would have been copied on the film, the computer would have recognized it. We have not found anything of the kind." Mr. Michael Malin, professor for astronomy and expert for processes to evaluate pictures, said the following: "I personally consider these photos incredible. They seem to depict a genuine phenomenon. I was unable to find nothing wrong, absolutely nothing obviously wrong from these pictures. According to what I saw, I can state that this matter is not a photographic fake. No one is cheating us." The physics specialist Neil Davis, after looking at his after executing his photo investigation with regard to sharpness of the pictures, density of the colors, double exposure, one thing superimposed on the other one, and models and so on, he came to the following conclusions. By investigating the paper picture, nothing could be found which would have caused me to assume that the object, namely the spaceship depicted, would be anything else but the object which has been taken a picture of in some distance.
Oh, das reicht.
Okay, you think that's sufficient?
Reicht.
All right.
Rein mit den Analysen.
Yeah, okay, then we proceed to something else, according to as Mr. Moosebrugger wants to do, otherwise we will never make it. A few remarks about the Pleiadians from the planet Era. An absolutely special case are the Pleiadians from the planet Era, because they maintain a number of bases in the entire universe, among others also in our solar system. 3 of them here on our planet Earth. Of course, these bases are well hidden and they're hermetically secured, so we have almost no chance in order to find these hiding places unless we would know their exact coordinates. These 3 bases on Earth were occupied, they were manned for 11 years, that is from January 28, 1975 to January 28, 1986, permanently by a dozen extraterrestrial races who all, without an exception, came from the Pleiadians and from the Lyra-Vega system. These research teams were actually only here because of us, and they gave us all kinds of help, something that is still happening right now, only in a different framework than it used to be. I'd like to say a few words about the metal samples which you saw on the pictures, the analysis of the metal samples. The exterior cover of a Pleiadian spaceship consists of a metal alloy which is the result of a complicated production process of altogether 7 work processes. 4 different small metal fragments of this alloy were subjected to a thorough and labor-intensive analysis here in the US by the experts Dr. Marcel Vogel, a research chemist from IBM in San Jose, California, and Dr. Edwin Walker from Tucson, Arizona. Both experts were able to determine that the metal samples come from an alloy which had been produced with a so-called cold synthesis process, a process which at this time is still unknown here on Earth. In an interview with the Japanese UFO researcher Junichi Yaoi, Marcel Vogel said the following, among others, I quote, "I'm unable to account for this kind of metal. With no known combination of materials, I was able to repeat its production as a scientist. With no technology which I know about, we would be able to accomplish anything like this here on our planet. I showed it to one of my friends, a metallurgist, and he shook his head and said, I know no way how that could be accomplished." Das wollen Sie haben, das? Okay, the Pleiadians from the planet Era, they take up a special position insofar as they are superior to their allies in terms of evolution. At any rate, they are by far ahead of us humans from the planet Earth. Purely already in technological respects, they are about 8,000 years ahead of us and about 20 to 30 million years in their spiritual evolvement. In spite of that, we are not dealing here with any kind of angel-like unearthly beings, but we're dealing with human beings of flesh and blood, just like us, just a kind which is more sophisticated and has reached a higher stage of involvement. Their average life expectancy is around 1,000 Earth years. But I would like to stress here expressly that these data pertain exclusively to the Pleiadians from the planet Era, because there are countless other civilizations with totally different conditions. Billy's current contact person, named Ptah, is on the one hand a commander of the Pleiadian spacecraft fleet. On the other hand, as I said, he holds the rank of a so-called Ishvish, which means as much as King of Wisdom. An Ishvish has about the greatest possible amount of knowledge and wisdom which a man can acquire, as long as he still has a body consisting out of matter, out of coarse material. Furthermore, Ptah has the supervision over 3 inhabited planets, as I said, his home planet Era, our Earth, as well as the planet Alatides of the system Harkomen. Das passt nicht hier nach. Ah, 6 müsste kommen, ne? Ich dachte jetzt, okay. Thank you. Which goals now do the Pleiadians and their allies here have on Earth? The interest of the Pleiadians on the fate of our planet Earth is based firstly on the historical facts of the past. Because the Pleiadians see themselves as also stemming from common ancestors, which in prehistoric time have lived here on Earth and who have decisively influenced the development of mankind here on Earth, in a positive as well as in a negative sense. The Pleiadians of today feel jointly responsible for the behavior of the earlier ancestors, and the resulting excesses which are directed against creation. The Pleiadians try to make up as much as possible for the damage caused by these older peoples, and the positive aspects rest in the fact that as a result of the many teachings, the many things they have taught us, the evolution of our population here on Earth has increased at an enormously accelerated speed, because otherwise we would today still exist at the conditions of the Stone Age. Unfortunately, these extraterrestrials have also exercised negative influences on us earthly human beings, and that is the negative side of the coin. Anyway, in spite of that, you cannot blame them for these problems. You cannot just blame the extraterrestrials, because the humans were all too ready to take over negative things, resulting in excesses, and they escalated these negative aspects to the point of no return. And that, of course, is still the case today. Apart from that, the Pleiadians function, so to speak, as spiritual development helpers, if you will, for the needy civilizations to which we unfortunately are part of too, whether we like to hear this or not. The main goal of the Pleiadians clearly consists in the advancement of the spiritual development of humankind by trying to lead us back on the right path which we left a long time ago. What are they giving us? They're communicating to us ancient esoteric wisdoms, the true laws and commandments of creation, and the universally valid directives for the right way of living. Now, of course, no age is so well suitable to advance the spiritual evolution to a higher stage than the Aquarian age, in the second transitional half of which we are right now and up to the year 2029, after which the actual Aquarian age will really have an effect. Part of the measures in which the Pleiadians are helping us are not only all kinds of teachings, informations of all kinds, but also in increasing measure the very intense warnings in relation to the accelerated increase of the destruction of our planet. It is simply indescribable with what blue-eyedness, with which irresponsibility, the repeated warnings of the Pleiadians have been ignored, have been just brushed under the table, although we are up to our neck in the water. If in the future no purposeful measures are taken, and to be sure on a worldwide basis, then catastrophic conditions will result the way we can't imagine them today. At this point, we would like to just quote the most important problems. Number one, the almost tenfold overpopulation, which constitutes the greatest problem, which therefore has to be reduced as fast as possible. Number two, the gradual shutdown of nuclear power plants, which is much more dangerous than we are being told. The stop of all nuclear bomb tests, which are continued, some of them quite secretly or in a subterraneous way, which are also used for civil purposes, in order, for example, to adjust riverbeds and build dams and so on. And of course, the elimination of all kinds of nuclear weapons, of chemical and biological weapons. Number three, effectively fighting against the environmental pollution on land, in the water, and in the air. But this, of course, today is a well-known fact already. Something about the help of the extraterrestrials. The manner in which help is given to us, of course, does not correspond to our wishes and our own ideas. Thus, it is erroneously expected that the extraterrestrials have, so to speak, should, so to speak, set everything right here on Earth with a general one-time overhaul. Set humans straight by, for example, taking over the governments, taking over governmental power over the entire Earth, which, on the basis of the technical possibilities, they would be able to do. But for such a forceful takeover, they are legally not empowered. And in the long run, this wouldn't have any positive results, because we ourselves have to take care that everything is set right again. And that can only happen as a result of a radical renewal of consciousness, and that on an absolutely voluntary basis, and never by force. We may want to compare the help of the extraterrestrials with the function of a doctor. He first makes a diagnosis for the cause of the disease, and the basis of this diagnosis, he gives us the corresponding therapeutic instructions. Everything else the patient himself has to do. Especially then, when we are dealing with problems which we have caused ourselves. We may not ask the extraterrestrial friends to do the dirty work for us. Besides, their instruction can only be given to us in spurts, in precisely dosage portions, so that we do not skip very important jumps in our process of learning, something which happens to be absolutely necessary for our evolution.
Danke.
Okay.
Ja, dann würde ich sagen, wir fangen gleich an mit der Diskussion. Wenn irgendjemand eine Frage hat, soll er sich bitte jetzt melden.
Well, then I would say we're starting with the discussion right away. If anyone has a question, please raise your hands.
Why only through Billy Meier, if they're giving these warnings and teachings, are they attempting to contact our governments through other means?
Warum nur durch Billy Meier, wenn Sie uns auf irgendeine Weise belehren wollen? Warum kontaktieren Sie nicht die Regierung, andere Regierungen direkt?
Ja, also das hat mehrere Gründe. Erstens einmal haben sich schon die Vorfahren dieser Pleiadier an diese Direktive gehalten, immer nur mit einer einzigen Person Kontakte zu halten. Und das wollen sie auch weiterhin so pflegen. Das ist ein Grund. Ein zweiter Grund ist, dass Billy Meier eben diese Fähigkeiten hat, die dazu nötig sind, mit diesen Pleiadiern überhaupt Kontakte zu pflegen. Das fängt schon an mit der sogenannten Geisttelepathie. Jeder Kontakt wird eingeleitet mit einem telepathischen Anruf. Und das geschieht mit Geisttelepathie und da brauchen Sie über 50 Millionen Symbole, die Sie im Kopf haben, die Sie dann in die Sprache übersetzen müssen. Und das kann eben von uns keiner, aber Billy Meier kann das eben. Dann hat er natürlich auch viele Geheimkontakte gehabt, und zwar vom 5. Lebensjahr an 22 Jahre Geheimkontakte, und in dieser Zeit wurde er belehrt, damit er diese Aufgabe erfüllen kann. Und dazu ist ein besonderes Wissen erforderlich, das ist aber kein sogenanntes materielles Wissen, sondern das nennt man geistiges Wissen, das kann man nicht aus Büchern lernen, das hat mit geistigen Belangen zu tun. Dann muss er natürlich auch viele andere Eigenschaften besitzen. Er darf sich nicht einschüchtern lassen, wenn er angegriffen wird. Er hat ja schon bereits 13 Mordanschläge hinter sich. Und es gibt noch viele andere Gründe auch.
Maybe I take over this point, otherwise we start forgetting things. There are several reasons, of course. The ancestors of the Pleiadians already stuck to the policy of always contacting one person only, and they want to continue this policy.
Nach dem Motto, viele Köche verderben den Brei.
According to a motto, is a German proverb, is that many cooks spoil the stew, right? And Billy, of course, has special abilities which are required for the contacts with the Pleiadians. That is a telepathic ability. All these contacts are initiated by telepathic call. It is a spiritual kind of telepathy, which requires that 50 million symbols have to be present in a person's brain in order to translate, to decipher the codes given to him. Now Billy has this ability, and he has developed it from actually his 5th year on. For the following 22 years, he has had secret contacts, and he was taught to fulfill this task he was being trained for. So a special knowledge is required. And a person who wants to make the contacts must have these qualities. There are other qualities required. You must, for example, have a thick skin in order to weather all the attacks on you. Do not forget that over the years, a total of 13 assassination attempts Billy Meier had to endure.
Hat auch eine höhere Evolutionsstufe, das heißt, seine Schwingungen haben eine höhere Frequenz, und die Pleiadier sind sehr empfindlich gegen die Schwingungen der Erdenmenschen. Das heißt, sie müssen sich gegen normale Erdenmenschen abschirmen, damit sie diese Schwingungen nicht empfangen. Während bei Billy Meier brauchen sie kein Schutzgerät.
Okay, Billy Meier, on the other hand, has reached already a higher evolutionary stage. His vibrations have a higher frequency than those of other Earthlings. The Pleiadians have a problem with our kind of our vibrations that we emit, and it's necessary for them to shield themselves against us. This is not required in the case of Billy Meier.
Wir hatten deswegen einen fast tödlichen Unfall, weil diese Mjase diese Schwingungen aufgefangen hat von einem unserer Mitglieder, und da spielen sie dann verrückt, die können sich nicht mehr konzentrieren, sie wissen nicht mehr, was sie tun. Bei dieser Gelegenheit hat sie sich eine Verletzung am Gehirn zugezogen, musste dann sofort in die Heimat transportiert werden, und sie lag mehrere Tage im Koma, und man hat sie dann operiert.
We almost had a fatal accident because of this. When Semyase, for example, got too close to one of the members of our group, she just went crazy. She had an accident, suffered a brain injury, and she immediately had to be transported back to her home, where she was in a coma for several days and then had to be operated on.
Given the fact that they've revealed themselves to him in physical form, craft form, are there any pictures of their planet? Did he go with them to their planet? And if not, why?
Aufgrund der Tatsache, dass sie sich ihm ja in physischer Form auch zeigen, gibt es Bilder von ihrem eigenen Planeten oder ist er auf ihrem Planeten transportiert worden einmal und zurückgekommen?
Er war einige Tage auf Erra eingeladen, er hat aber keine Bilder knipsen dürfen von diesem Planeten. Es gibt aber einige hundert Bilder von einer Weltraumreise, die er unternehmen durfte, aber wir haben die Erlaubnis nicht, diese Bilder zu zeigen.
Mr. Meier was invited for a few days to Erra. He was not allowed to take photos, but there are a few hundred photos of a space trip that he undertook, but we are not allowed to show the pictures at this time.
Da sind die Erdenmenschen selber schuld, weil sie nämlich diese Bilder in Grund und Boden vermisst haben. Die sind nach allen möglichen Richtungen sind die also diskriminiert worden.
The humans are at fault themselves for this because they have bad-mouthed these pictures, they have changed them in all possible ways.
You mentioned that the last contact was in February and that they had something to say to us. Are you going to tell us what that was now?
Sie haben erwähnt, dass im Februar, dass Sie etwas sagen würden über den neuesten Kontakt in diesem Februar.
Ja, das könnte man über den Dritten Weltkrieg vielleicht vorlesen.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This concerns particularly something with regard to World War III. Let me give you that portion which we left out before as an answer to your question. When on June 19th, 1993, Billy Meier, in his personal contact with the Ishwish Ptar, was asking about World War III, he received the following answer, and I'm quoting verbatim. Right now, that is in the summer of 93, no factors whatsoever point at such a threatening event, and if the directives of the earthly governments and people remain the same and develop the same way in the future, then the danger of a third world war should be contained. However, on the other hand, earthly human beings are very fickle, they're power hungry, and not very constant in their behavior. That's why you cannot say with absolute certainty that in the coming years a new world war will not be triggered. That concerns the statement of summer 93. In contrast to this statement, the world political situation has obviously changed very much for the worse within 1 year, less than 1 year even. Correspondingly, very unsettling is something which the Ishwish Ptar said during these contact talks with Billy Meier on February the 3rd, 1994. In the course of this contact conversation, Billy pointed out that in 17 months of negotiations between the Vatican and Israel, for example, regarding the modalities of a mutual recognition and about the normalization of their relations, it was agreed, an agreement had been achieved that in the spring of 1994 the diplomatic relations had been, presumably, would be taken up again. As comical and as peculiar it may sound now, but according to the prophecies which were communicated to Billy Meier from his extraterrestrial friends and from a higher spiritual plane of the so-called Petale, this is a hint that a third world war is threatening again. Also, the appearance of the Russian extremist and warmonger Shiranovsky is indicating that a third world war has moved into the realm of possibilities again, in spite of all corresponding progress that have been made. And although less than 1 year ago it didn't look like that at all. With regard to this, Ptar said the following. On the one hand, the prophecy of the Vatican, of the Vatican Pact with Israel has become reality, something which indeed speaks as a bad omen for a threatening Third World War. On the other hand, the extremist Shiranovsky, who is indeed a particularly bad warmonger and a despot, who is obviously working towards a Third World War. The change brought about by Gorbachev, change for the better and for peace in an increasing form, is thus being dampened. It can very quickly change again into a defeat when this crazy person gains the power he is striving for. Now, in this respect, it is important how the Russian people, as well as all others responsible in the entire world, will behave, whether or not this warmonger will gain supreme power, or whether he can be toppled and ultimately removed from power, any power position. He is a threat for the entire world, because when he actually gains the power he is looking for, then we must fear for the worst. Billy answered, he is even worse than Saddam Hussein, with whom he is supposed to be allied, and with whose ally he is supposed to be. And if only one of them is already terribly bad, and they're both together, they are evil itself. To eliminate them, finally, according to me, would be an act of self-defense. To this, Ptar responded, this is absolutely true. However, this responsibility lies with those who have the power to do so, and these alone are responsible for that. Now, a prophecy is not something which absolutely must take place, as, for example, a sure look at the future. The prophecy is just a serious warning of people. And that means when people do not change in their thinking and in their actions, then a prophecy will be fulfilled. Otherwise it will not, or maybe only in a mitigated form. In other words, it depends solely and exclusively on the behavior of man. The more reasonably they act and think, the smaller does the threat become, and unfortunately this is also true for the Third World War. In other words, it must definitely be prevented that someone like Shiranovsky gains power, because otherwise, as already said, we must fear for the worst.
Es wurde auch ausdrücklich gewarnt vor dem Gebrauch der Funktelefongeräte. Also man sollte mindestens 16 cm Abstand halten zwischen Ohr und Antenne. Nicht, die sind ja heutzutage üblich, auch in den Autos, wenn sie verwendet.
There was a specific warning expressed with regard to the wireless car phones and so on. You should at least keep a distance of 16 centimeters, which will be about half a foot between the ear and the antenna.
Und die Angaben über die Vitamin C-Dosen, die sind viel zu klein bei uns auf der Erde. Und man sollte täglich 12,5 Milligramm pro Kilogramm Körpergewicht nehmen. Also wenn jemand 75 Kilogramm wiegt, dann rund 1000 milligram per Tag.
And the required minimum daily requirements for vitamin C, for example, doses of vitamin C are supposedly much too small. You are supposed to take at least 12.5 milligrams per kilogram weight, or a little over 2 pounds, that is. That is, if someone weighs about 75 kilograms, which would be about 160, 170 pounds, he would have to take 1,000 milligrams per day.
Also diese Dosis erhöht sich bei schwerer Arbeit auf 14 Milligramm pro Kilogramm.
And this increases when a person works hard to 40 milligrams per kilogram weight.
My question is regarding the physical appearance of the Palladians, and if any pictures are available, or will we ever see any visuals of the actual aliens? And also, one more question would be, what is their intake of their diet, the dietary intake, such as food, etc.?
Thank you. Es sind zwei Fragen. Das erste ist die Frage nach dem physischen Äußeren der Pleiadier, nämlich gibt es Fotos, die zur Verfügung stehen, die man sehen kann? Das zweite, was nehmen Sie zu sich, was essen Sie? Was für Nahrungsmittel?
Ja, also es wurde ja bereits gesagt im Vortrag, es sind keine engelhaften Wesen, sondern sind aus Fleisch und Blut, so wie wir, also physisch, körperhaft, etwas feiner dimensioniert als wir, auch in einer höheren Schwingungsebene. Aber ansonsten sehen sie eigentlich so aus wie wir. Sie haben ja ein Bild sehen können von der Semjase, das war eine Zeichnung, und das andere von der Asket. Die haben ja früher auch, das Volk von Asket hat ja früher auch in unserem Universum gewohnt. Und wir haben mit diesen Außerirdischen, haben wir auf der Erde gemeinsame Vorfahren, und deshalb sehen die uns so ähnlich. Es gibt natürlich genügend andere, die haben bloß ein Auge, die haben 4 Arme und. Nicht? Das ist also nicht die Regel. Nun zur zweiten Frage, was Sie für Nahrung zu sich nehmen. Sie legen also sehr großen Wert auf Gemüse und Obst, und sie ernähren sich sowohl von tierischen als auch von pflanzlichen Nahrungsmitteln. Das sind also keine reinen Vegetarier, muss ich ausdrücklich betonen. Sie nehmen auch tierische Nahrungsmittel zu sich. Das muss allerdings nicht in der Form sein, dass sie jetzt Kühe und Schweine schlachten, sondern diese Tiere werden künstlich mit Hilfe von Zellkulturen hochgezüchtet. Sodass sie also auch auf ihre Schnitzel nicht verzichten müssen. Ja.
Okay, as I said before in my presentation, these Pleiadians are not angelic or angel-like creatures, but they're beings of flesh and blood. Of course, they're somewhat finer dimensions. You have seen a drawing, at least, of Semjose. You've seen a picture of Asket, whose people used to live in our universe. The fact that they look very similar to us is because we have our forefathers in common. So as a result, they look the same. But this, of course, only refers to these particular peoples. There are others, of course, who have only 1 eye and 4 arms and so on. So the absolutely human-like look is not the rule. As far as the dietary intake is concerned, I'd like to stress that they put emphasis on vegetable and fruit, but they are not strict, no pure vegetarians. They eat animal and plant foods, but they do not slaughter animals, cattle and pigs and so on. They raise them artificially. What they need, they raise artificially through cell cultures.
Nur wenn Sie,
that way you don't have to renounce your pork chop.
Also wenn Sie gar keine tierischen Stoffe haben, dann müssen Sie Ersatzstoffe aus pflanzlichen Produkten nehmen, die in etwa dementsprechend.
If they don't have the appropriate animal type of nourishments, then they have to use plant foods, which somehow in the composition correspond to the animal foods.
Und Ihre Früchte, die sind natürlich bei weitem nahrhafter als bei uns. Da können Sie bis zu 90 Stunden lang nur von Früchten alleine leben. Brauchen Sie sonst gar nicht.
The fruit has a much higher nutritional value than ours does. You can live, for example, without any trouble, you can live for 94 hours only in fruit. You cannot do that with ours anymore.
Und dasselbe gilt auch für den Vitamingehalt. Bei uns sind ja die Früchte sehr arm geworden an Vitaminen, und deshalb sollten wir ja täglich diese Vitamin-C-Tabletten nehmen.
And this, of course, also concerns the vitamin content. As you know, our fruit and our vegetables become very poor in vitamins, and this is one of the reasons why we should take these vitamin supplements of vitamin C every day. That's, glaube ich, alles, ne?
More questions? What do they do for fun?
Was machen Sie zum Spaß? Was machen Sie um Spaß zu haben? Freizeit? Sich zu vergnügen?
Ja, darüber haben wir eigentlich sehr wenig erfahren. Also,
we learned very little about that.
Zunächst einmal kann ich sagen, dass jeder Mann, der arbeitsfähig ist, natürlich auch die Frau, minimal 2 Stunden für die Allgemeinheit arbeiten muss, täglich, ohne Entgelt.
We didn't talk very much about the question of having fun, but first I want to say that every person, man or woman, has to work at least 2 hours a day without remuneration, without being paid, for the common weal, for the common good.
Das heißt natürlich nicht, dass sie sich auf die faule Haut legen, sondern sie studieren bis zu 30 Wissenschaften.
That doesn't mean that they're lazy. They are studying up to 30 different fields of science.
Und sie kriegen alle Güter umsonst. Es gibt kein Geld. Sie kriegen alles, was sie brauchen.
They receive everything they need, or material goods, for free. There's no money.
Und sie betreiben wahrscheinlich auch in geringem Maße Sport, nehme ich an.
I assume that they also do some exercise to a certain limited extent.
Aber nicht so wie wir mit Fußball und so.
But not the way we do it with soccer and so on.
Und sie legen auch großen Wert für Künste, also Malerei und Musik.
They also put very much emphasis on the arts, on painting and music.
Ja, viel mehr kann ich dazu nicht
I
sagen.
can't say much more about that.
I just want to ask if he'll be around tomorrow at the FIGU booth. Mr. Moosebrugger will be around.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
I just wanted to ask if Mr. Moosebrugger will be at the FIGU booth tomorrow.
Werden Sie morgen im Stand sein?
Ja.
Yes, he will.
Yeah, are any of the three secret bases you mentioned earlier still being used by either the Pleiadians or any of the other races that you mentioned?
Werden diese geheimen Basen, von denen Sie gesprochen haben, auf der Erde, werden die weiterhin heute noch von den Pleiadiern oder anderen benutzt?
Also 2 Basen wurden aufgelöst, eine ist noch besetzt und zwar in der Schweiz. Aber ich kann Ihnen nicht genau sagen, wie viele Leute dort arbeiten.
2 of the bases were dissolved, were disbanded. 1 is still intact, still working. It's working in Switzerland, but I'm unable to tell you how many people are working there.
Aber vielleicht könnten Sie sagen, wenn jemand morgen zum Stand kommen will, dann würde ich Ihnen gerne Antwort geben.
If anyone would like to talk to Mr. Moosebrugger tomorrow at the stand, he must most welcome to discuss this matter further with him.
What would the Pleiadians recommend as far as the situation with North Korea?
Was würden die Pleiadier empfehlen, was in Bezug auf die Situation in Nordkorea?
Also grundsätzlich betreiben sie keine Politik und geben auch diesbezüglich keine Auskünfte. Das sind also Ausnahmen, dass sie sich darüber äußern. In Bezug auf Jugoslawien haben sie schon gleich...
Ja, okay, Nordkorea, nicht?
Ja. Also darüber wurde kein Wort gesagt.
No. As a matter of principle, the Pleiadians do not meddle into politics here. They do not give information, only in exceptional cases. And with regard to North Korea, nothing was said. Nothing has been said.
In Bezug auf Jugoslawien haben sie gleich am Anfang gesagt, es wäre das einzig richtige Mittel, dass man mit einer multinationalen Friedenstruppe, so nennen die das, eingegriffen hätten, gleich am Anfang, und dann wäre das innerhalb weniger Tage wäre der Fall erledigt gewesen. Man hätte sich viel Unheil und Elend ersparen können.
With regard to Yugoslavia, they said that the only good means to take care of this problem would have been to deploy a multinational force, a peace force as they called it, right at the beginning. Then the whole problem could have been settled within a few days, and a lot of misery would have been spared.
Ja, das gilt aber für sämtliche Länder, nicht nur für Jugoslawien.
That of course applies to many other countries too, not just to Yugoslavia.
Das ist eine falsche Humanität, wenn wir immer bloß meinen, ja, man darf nicht, man darf nicht. Man hätte nämlich viel Unheil damit verhindern können.
It's a wrong kind of humanitarian thinking when we always say you're not allowed to. Sometimes you can avoid a lot of problems in the world by intervening right away at the beginning.
In their evolution, what is their understanding of relationships, love, and procreation? How do they do that? Is it same there as it is here?
Es geht die Frage der Fortpflanzung, weil sie weiter entwickelt schon sind, wie pflanzen sie sich fort?
Genauso wie wir. Solange ein Mensch einen Körper hat, pflanzt er sich so fort wie wir, bloß sind die Fortpflanzungsorgane nicht immer genau dieselben, wie wir sie haben.
The procreation takes place the same way as with us here on Earth, although the various organs are not necessarily the same.
It's one thing I've wondered about for several years. I had heard some people talking about Nazi Germany's influence by negative Pleiadians. Is there any truth to that, or do you have anything to say about
Ich
that?
habe vor einigen Jahren davon gehört, dass der Einfluss von Nazi-Deutschland auf den Nazi-Deutschland auf den Einfluss von Pleiadiern zurückgeht. Stimmt das?
Nein.
No.
That concluded then.
Zu der Sache möchte ich sagen, dass dieser Reichsführer Adolf Hitler, der wurde von der sogenannten Thule-Gesellschaft ausgebildet. Das ist aber eine Erdorganisation, eine Geheimorganisation der Erde.
I would like to say in this context that Adolf Hitler was trained by the so-called Thule Society, which however is an earthly society.
Es gibt übrigens, es gibt auch heute noch etliche Geheimorganisationen, von denen der normale Erdenbürger keine Ahnung hat.
Even today there are a number of secret societies and assistants which the normal citizen doesn't know anything about.
Eine davon, die hat ihren Sitz in Südamerika und die ist verantwortlich, dass Billy Meier 2 Mordanschläge verbuchen konnte auf Kosten dieser Gruppe.
One of these secret societies is located in South America and is responsible for 2 assassination attempts of Billy Meier.
I'm wondering, are there publications available regarding their spiritual practices and spiritual enlightenment? Any publications, any
Gibt es
written
irgendwelche
information?
Veröffentlichungen über ihr religiöses Leben, über ihre Aufklärung, die innere?
Also wie sie religiös leben? Oder?
Ja, ich weiß nicht, was
Naja, also grundsätzlich ist es so, dass die sagen, es gibt keinen einzigen Planeten im gesamten Universum, der so viele Irreligionen hat wie die Erde.
What they say in general is that there's no planet in the entire universe which has so many wrong teachings, religions as the planet Earth.
Und die meisten Religionen sind mehr oder weniger im Laufe der Geschichte verfälscht worden.
Most of the religions in the course of history have been more or less falsified.
Das, was die echten Propheten gelehrt haben, das war richtig, aber die Leute haben das verfälscht wiedergegeben.
What the original prophets were teaching was correct, but it has been falsified in the process of rendering it.
Und das ist auch ein Hauptgrund, warum die Pleiadier hier sind und diese Sachen korrigieren, weil sie sagen, ihr habt den richtigen Weg verlassen, wir müssen zur echten, wahren, schöpferischen Wahrheit zurück, zu den schöpferischen Gesetzen, und dabei wollen sie uns helfen.
And this is why one of the main reasons why the Pleiadians are here, because they're saying you have left the right path, which was in sync with creation, and we want to help you to get back on the right path again, the right road.
Für viele Leute sehr schwer, weil sie dann ihr ganzes Weltbild ändern müssen, und das mögen sie nicht.
And
das kostet Anstrengung.
For many people it's very difficult to accept because they would have to change their entire worldview, and they don't like it because it's very painful.
Zumal dann, wenn sie religiös angehaucht sind.
And particularly if they have a very pious strain.
Und deshalb werden wir auch angefeindet.
And that's why we have all these enemies.
Do they give any hints as to what is the right path in their practice or their view?
Haben Sie irgendwie darauf hingewiesen, was der richtige Weg ist, nach Ihrer Meinung?
Ja, wir haben eine ganze Menge von Büchern und Schriften, da steht das alles schwarz auf weiß geschrieben.
We have a number of publications which detail these views.
Sie können an unseren Stand kommen, können sich eine Liste
You may come. Why don't you come to our stand? We can give you a list of things that are available.
Aber die sind sehr hart geschrieben, das sage ich Ihnen gleich.
Well, they're very tough in what they're stating. I say that to you right away.
Da wird also nicht mit Honig geschmiert, so wie bei anderen der Fall ist.
No one is beating around the bush, as is the case with other people.
Knallharte Wahrheit.
The truths are just said, as tough as they are. Hard to swallow.
Okay, I guess that's it. Thanks for coming, and let's give Guido a big hand for coming all that way.
Thank you very much. Dankeschön.
Ich gebe Ihnen das alles gleich wieder. Nicht zu danken.
That concludes our presentation. The information you've just heard is available in written form. All of Billy Meier's material is written in German. However, the California Study Group translates Billy's publications from German to English and is the only group in America approved to do so. If you would like further information on currently available English translations, you may send a self-addressed stamp envelope to the California Study Group for an order form. Please send your inquiries to California Study Group, Post Office Box 5108, Chatsworth, California 91311.